I can say this gave me everything that I needed until it didn't. Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today I'm coming to you all with yet another review, this time for Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. Directed by Gore Verbinski and starring Sam Rockwell, Lu Richardson, Michael Peña, Zazie Beetz, and many more. Story-wise, the film is centered around a man from the future who arrives at an LA diner in hopes of recruiting the perfect combination of patrons to join him on a one-night quest to save the world from a rogue artificial intelligence. I have no idea why that concept sounds so familiar to me.
Come with me if you want to live.
But I digress. So I'm going to start with the pros. For starters, I have to say that Gore Verbinski, I have my own memories, of course. I think many of you will know him for his work on the original Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, The Ring and Rango. But for me, it's always going to come back to 1997's Mouse Hunt. Oh, the days. Oh, the memories. That's always going to be a standout for me, and of course to see all that he's done since then. It's been great seeing him back with a new film since his last film was A Cure for Wellness, which was about 9 years ago, so it's good to see him back on board. What I enjoyed most is that, of course, this film is highlighting the dangers and the complications of AI, something that we have been hearing about for years on end, and I am still unsure as to whether or not we're going to learn from, any of the stories, any of the films and general narratives concerning AI. But, that's besides the point. I did appreciate how the film took its time to incorporate the different patrons at the diner and some of their backstories. I'm a sucker for different perspectives. I love a backstory. I love interconnected storylines and characters and all of that. So as soon as we got into that, I was like, oh yes. This is right up my alley. You guys know, if you saw Weapons, that was something else I enjoyed in that film. So yes, the fact that we got that, I really did appreciate that as far as a storytelling dynamic of the film. I'll also say that we have a fairly stacked cast. In our lead, of course, we have Sam Rockwell, and I think Sam Rockwell is absolutely a wonderful actor. However, it took me some time to get over my initial discomfort with him because The Green Mile and Charlie's Angels, I was like, I don't know about this dude. Yes, I understand it's just acting, but he's also playing some other characters, and I was just like, I just don't know. But no, he really is a huge part of what makes this film work. Of course, he's the main character, he's the central focus, he is trying to convince these people in the most compelling and maybe not so polite way that we have a future that we're trying to avoid, and he is doing what he can to try to circumvent that future in any way possible. And I think it's just another wonderful performance from Sam Rockwell, thankfully without the more sinister elements that I've gotten used to from him in other roles. But outside of that, we have Lu Richardson. Of course, I'm familiar with her from the second season of The White Lotus. I thought she was solid. We also have Michael Peña and Zazie Beetz. And I just thought the cast as a whole was enjoyable. I thought the tone of the film, along with those performances, it was kind of like a dark comedy feel, which I enjoyed. We had some moments where it got intense and serious and a little bleak as well. But I appreciated the way that the characters, the story, the time travel, all of those elements blended together and really made this a film that was fairly entertaining and just compelling to watch. All right, now I'm going to jump over to the cons. As I said in my intro, this all worked for me. It was definitely giving me the impression that I was going to walk away feeling like A minus. And we were all well and good until we got to the third act. And as soon as, our band of not so merry heroes entered this room, that's where it went. went downhill for me. I don't think that the idea behind what's being shown as far as the third act and the ending, the conclusion, all that, that's fine. It's just that to me, that last sequence was just so overblown and over the top, and just it was just a little too much for me. And then it was so drawn out. And I do think the film, because it's about maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes, I really felt the runtime towards the end. Like prior to that, I could tell, of course, it was slightly slower paced and that we had some ground to cover, and I was fine. But the way that final sequence just stretched on and on, like we were stretching and pulling like old gum. I was just like, all right, enough, please. This is too much. And I feel like it could have easily have gotten to the point, and even the film as a whole, even with the parts I enjoyed, it definitely could have been compressed. It was way too much done at the end. And of course, what I also didn't like is that there was a general practical tone to the film. We had some effects and a couple of really unexpected visual images. So, I mean, I wasn't upset that there was CGI, but the nature of how it was used and how it looked, and let's be honest, you all already know how I feel when it comes to my feelings about CGI. It was just a lot. And I just think that then once we got to like the ending, it just made it feel like, all right. Whereas had we just done some better editing and, tightened up the pacing and the runtime, I would have felt more like, oh, okay. I would have appreciated that more. But at that point, I was like, all right, tick-tock, like, let's move it along, please. I will also say that as someone who doesn't actively go looking for the twist in the film, I'm not someone who's just like, oh, I bet it's this, I don't know. For me, that's not really a fun way to watch films. Sometimes you can guess, sometimes you have an idea. Like, I'm thinking, but I try not to just think like, oh, this is it. But the way that they attempted to conceal a certain twist, you could see it a mile away. And I was just like, oh, well, that's not really fun. So I was kind of frustrated by that. And then I just think the nature of the storytelling, although in some way, because it is satirical, some of it is meant to be heavy-handed. But I do think there was a good amount of it that was very don't. All right, I'm very clear. Like, let's have a little bit of nuance here. We understand that this is bad, but we don't need to lose a sense of subtlety at some point in the way that we are trying to bring across this message. So some of that for me was just kind of like, I understand, but this is not kindergarten. All right, so I'm going to give Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die a B-. I'm not going to lie. That last part dropped it significantly. Like I said, this was probably like A-, and then it was just like down. It was not quite C+, but almost. I was just like, so much of everything else before that point works. So that's kind of what kept me in the B space. But I wish we could have done something different with that ending. But I will say, as a whole, this was a very enjoyable, entertaining experience, of course, at the theater. And I enjoyed the performances. I enjoyed the concept. I love the fact that Gore Verbinski is, back on the scene. And unlike, certain other directors, he is not coming back into the public eye with a film that is unworthy of his talents. Let's just say that. Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die is currently playing in theaters. You all feel free to check it out. Leave your thoughts below and let me know what you think. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you with the movies.